there's kind of a choice to be made there. So if you want to do generalist, you can do that. Um, but if you are in a school that might qualify for the targeted supplement, generalist does not get that extra $5,000, whereas math does. So if that's something that you want to consider, you may want to look at that. The other thing that I would tell you about that is that some of the math certificates, and I will tell you right now that I'm a literacy person, and so I did not certify in math, but some of the math certificates have like requirements for you as a teacher to know math that would be far beyond sixth grade. So what you may want to do is just pull up the component one book that they give you, like everything about component one, and just sort of look through it. It's kind of the study guide that you would use for the component one test, and see if you would feel comfortable with doing that. You can also just look at the standards that National Boards puts out for the various certificates that you can choose from. Because if you're doing math intervention 4 through 6, you've got some choices there, and it's not really something that somebody can choose for you. It's just going to be the one that you feel the most comfortable with doing. So, um, you know, kind of depends on that targeted supplement if you want that, and then also how comfortable you are with doing like higher level math.
Okay, I have that it is 9:54. So we will start in exactly 1 minute. And we have a couple more people we're admitting into the waiting. I'm sorry, into the meeting. So right now we're at over 125. So that's great.
It's great. Super excited. Welcome,
It is,
everybody.
it is very exciting.
Um, Dr. Brown, will you put the attendance link in the chat? I'll say, or do you do that at the end? I don't think I have that to put in.
Okay, let's see.
Harriet, I see your question. So if you wanted to do two certifications, two national board certifications, yes, you would have to do two separate courses. Most people don't do that because if you have your national board certification, then you are an NBCT, and it doesn't mean that you have to be teaching in that field. So, for example, my certification is in literacy, early and middle childhood literacy, but I taught eighth grade English and then I taught fourth grade science, but I'm still in NBCT. So you may just want to look at those two and see which one you are more interested in doing, that you would feel more comfortable with. And then once you get through one of them, if you really want to do another one, you can, but you don't have to.
Okay, I have that it is 9:55. So we will go ahead and get started uh, with the session Basics of National Board Certification with JC Douglas.
Hi, welcome everybody. I'm super excited that you guys are here. Kind of wanted to just remind you, as Dr. Shields and the others have said, to tag us on social media, let people know that you're here. That's kind of all the hashtags that they're using and some suggestions there on that first slide. I'm just going to kind of go ahead. I don't expect that we are going to leave this Zoom session knowing everything about national boards and being ready to jump into it. This is very, very much like an overview where I'm going to tell you some things about it and try to give you a really good basis of knowledge for getting started and kind of knowing what you're getting into. There are other sessions today and then, the rest of the week in person about the different components that do deep dives into those. We don't have time to do deep dives into components today. but I'm going to try to answer your questions. And then hopefully at the end, we will have some additional time for questions. Just let you know a little bit about me. My name is JC Douglas. I certified in literacy, reading, language arts in 2020, and then I maintained in 2024. So I'll be doing that again in a couple of years. I taught for 22 years, mostly middle school English, but I also taught high school for a little while and then took a leap of faith and moved down to elementary for a few years. So I'm certified in English and science, grades 4 through 12. But my heart is in English. So that's kind of why I wanted to certify there. I am a member of the Alabama NBCT Network, the board of directors. I'm the outreach coordinator. So if you are a national board certified teacher later and you'd like to give back, we have national board ambassadors that we call on to like present at conferences and help us out with different things. And we'd love to have you on board later. I'm also, I've just taken a new job. So I left the classroom in May. It hasn't really hit me yet. I'm now a UniServe director for AEA, and I work in District 5. So if you are a teacher or a school employee in Morgan County or Winston County, then I am your UniServe director. So anyway, we'll get started with our mission objectives for today. So I want you to understand what National Board Certification is and why it matters. We're going to learn what the 4 components are and what the certification process looks like. I'm going to show you where to find some resources and some support that are available. And we're going to kind of help you to start to develop your own plan of attack for how you want to tackle national boards, because it is highly individualized. So what I did for mine is maybe not going to look like what you decide to do for yours. And if you are teaching next door to someone and both of you are working on it, that's fantastic. But you may have very different instructions for some of your components because you may be doing different certificate areas. So just kind of go through all of that. So a lot of folks don't know how national boards started. So I'm going to give you a brief history. I'm going to take you all the way back to 1983. So 1983, and we think like, oh, those were the good old days and discipline wasn't a problem and everybody knew what learning was and schools were great. And, you know, maybe you were alive then, maybe you weren't, I was, but we don't have to talk about that. Anyway, but in 1983, there was a report that came out called A Nation at Risk. And A Nation at Risk detailed, mainly using high school test scores, a rising tide of mediocrity in education that threatened America's future. Does this sound familiar to you? Some things don't change, right? It's always been the teacher's fault. So this report came out, and of course, people panicked. And so there was a task force that was convened, and it was put together by the Carnegie Forum on Education and the Economy. And it included policymakers and educators and some business leaders, and asked them, what do you think is going on? They dove into this report, and they decided to come up with new standards for teachers. So in 1987, the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards was born, and that is where we get National Board Certified Teachers. Now, it is important to note that educators were then and are still involved in coming up with these standards. So it was not completely politicians and policymakers and business people, but it was and still is very much for teachers and by teachers. So what does it mean? Why do you want to do it? So it's recognized as the gold standard in teacher certification. Really, this means that you have demonstrated that you have reached these high standards for teachers and you are trying to make better learning conditions for your students. So NBPTS, which is the founder of the National Board Certification process, maintains these high and rigorous standards, and they call them what teachers should know and be able to do. So you kind of think about it like the bar exam for attorneys or medical board certification for doctors. We hold these people to a high standard. You don't want to go to a doctor that hasn't passed their certification exam, and you don't want to hire an attorney that hasn't passed the bar. So the idea for this, of course, obviously you can be a teacher without, and you can be a great teacher without achieving National Board Certification. It's it's not, it's voluntary. It's not something that you have to do, but it is just sort of a way of being able to say, like, I have accomplished this. Um, this is what I'm capable of. I am an accomplished teacher. And it means something to some folks. You may be in a district where they do not understand the certification process and what it requires. So if that's the case, then hopefully you will be able to go back to people in your district and explain what this is and help them to understand what it means and what you've accomplished, because it's a lot. Okay, so big question, how long does it take? Anybody got a guess in the chat? May have heard different things. So I can tell you how long you have to do it. How long it takes you is kind of your decision. So you have 4 components, and you can complete these components in any order. You do not have to have any certain order. You can do them all in a year. You can take 2 years. You can take 3 years. You have up to 3 years to complete all 4 components. Now, this really means that you have 3 years to attempt and submit all 4 components. You have up to 5 years to complete your certification process. So from the first year that you've registered, you said, okay, this year I'm going to do component number 3. And you submit component number 3 that year. And then the next year you want to do 1 and 2, and then you want to do 4 the last year. You can do that. I'm in no way suggesting that that's the order you have to do it in. I just pulled that out of the air. But you have 5 years to complete it if you have to do any retakes. So you can, excuse me, you can submit anywhere from 1 to 4 components in a year. My teacher, Bestie, that taught next door to me for 18 years, she did all 4 in a year. It took me 2 years because I had children at home, and they had activities, and I started out thinking I'm going to do all 4 this year, and then I panicked, and I did 2 and 2. Some people like to just start out by doing 1 component and just kind of testing the waters and see how it goes. And then, you can do it in any order that you want, as long as you know that you have 3 years to complete all 4 of them. And then you have 2 more years if you need to do any retakes. And we'll talk about all that stuff, what the components are and all the retakes later. Okay, so at the very, very start here, you have to know who is eligible to be a National Board Certified Teacher. So are you a potential recruit? If you're here, then probably. So here are the requirements to become one of the few, the proud, the NBCTs. You do have to have a bachelor's degree. It does not necessarily have to be in education, but that helps. You do have to have, by the end of your process, you have to have completed 3 years of teaching experience. You may begin working towards certification with less than 3 years of experience. And we have seen a big uptick in that lately, because a lot of folks take EdTPA and they're coming out of college, and EdTPA is very similar in some ways to national boards. So if you're kind of in that mode, sometimes, it's nice to start out with it kind of early on. I don't know myself if I would have wanted to work on that during my first year in the classroom. I think that would be incredibly challenging, because if you're a veteran teacher, then that first year in the classroom it's rough. But anyway, but you all you have to do is, by the end of your 3 years or 5 years or however long it says, for you to take, or however long you decide to take, you do have to have had 3 years of teaching experience by the end of it. Okay. You must hold a valid state teaching license, so you must be a certified teacher. If you're a school counselor, you have to meet those licensure requirements for a school counselor. And if you are a world language candidate, you must meet the language proficiency requirement. So that is a passing score on that test. I did not do world languages and don't know much about that test, but I'm assuming if you're here to do national boards and world languages, then you know what that is. Most of the people that are here, you already meet these eligibility requirements. If you haven't quite yet completed 3 years of teaching experience, by the end of it, you're probably going to. If you're maybe on an emergency certificate right now, you have time to meet your certificate requirements. So this is not probably going to be a problem for anybody that's here. Okay. The next part of this is really sort of my favorite part. We're going to talk a little bit about the 5 core propositions, what those are, and what that means. So I'm going to show you a video here. It's just a clip of a video. This is a link to this document that National Boards created way back in 1987, published then, and it continually is updated. This is called What Teachers Should Know and Be Able to Do. The link to it is on the National Board website, so you can get to it from there. You don't necessarily have to read it today, but this is where your standards and everything like that is going to come from. Let's back that up. Okay, sorry about that, guys.
Miss Douglas, I'm getting in the chat. They're saying that they cannot see or hear the video.
Oh, goodness. Okay. I don't know what's going on then. Okay, well, I'll tell you what, we'll just stop that. If you can't see it, then there's no sense in continuing on with that. So let's see if we can get you back into the slideshow. I could not see the chat from there.
Yeah,
So.
we're
think
still
you're muted.
we're still seeing the slideshow.
Okay. Well, let's just go on from there. You guys will have this, so you can watch that video later if you want to. Basically, what it's talking about is just those 5 core propositions, what those are, and kind of what they mean. But it's a little bit about just kind of what being a National Board Certified Teacher means, beyond just like getting some recognition for it. And anyway, so can you guys see that? There's like some red on my screen. I don't know what that's from. But anyway, can you guys see the slideshow now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Oops, sorry about that. Okay. So the 5 core propositions for National Board are these. This is sort of the entire basis for when you do a portfolio. This is what you are proving to your assessor that you are doing in your classroom. So the first one is teachers are committed to students and their learning. Teachers know the subjects they teach and how to teach those subjects to their students. Teachers are responsible for managing and monitoring student learning. Teachers think systematically about their practice and they learn from experience, and teachers are members of learning communities. So as we go through these, and I've just got one slide for each, but what I want you to do is think about how you are already doing this in your classroom. What are you already doing that you can think of as specific examples to write about in your portfolios? Okay, so proposition 1 is that teachers are committed to students and their learning. This is basically just the knowledge of students. You know the students who are in your class. You want to really know the students that it is that you're going to be writing about. You're recognizing differences in your students. You're differentiating as needed. You're adjusting your practice to meet those student needs. You understand students, you understand your age band, how those students develop, how they learn. It's not just about their cognitive development and what they're learning in your class, but it's also just this knowledge of the age band and how they're going to react to things and how you might need to make changes to be able to reach those students. Okay, the next one is just that you know the subject that you teach. You know how to teach those subjects to your students. You understand how students acquire that knowledge, how it can be connected to other disciplines. Um, it's, if you are a committed teacher, you know how to teach your subject. And even with a generalist, you have a specialized knowledge of that age band that you are working with. You're going to, and you do this automatically. You already are providing different paths to knowledge. You are already giving your students different ways to demonstrate what they have learned. You're already doing this. Okay, Proposition 3 is that teachers are responsible for managing and monitoring student learning. This is not all about classroom management. Sometimes people hear the word managing and that's what they kind of latch onto and they want to talk about their classroom management. And that's really not what this is about. This is about managing and monitoring their learning. So while classroom management does play a part in it, it's not the most important part here. So this is, that you are using some formative assessments. You are having your students to tell you, self-assess, tell you where they are. Yes, I understand. No, I didn't understand. I need more help. You're valuing your student engagement. And, you are using this in various ways in different types of groups or different kinds of settings, and you are managing their learning as a teacher. Okay, Proposition 4, this is that reflection piece, and I cannot overstate the importance of reflection with the National
I'm going
Board
to the car,
process.
okay? Brush your teeth real quick.
So, in the reflection part of this, you are thinking about things that you've done in the past, and you're looking for ways to improve them. As a teacher, we have to make difficult choices sometimes. We have to test our professional judgment. We have to decide, are we going to ignore that behavior? Or are we going to address that behavior? Are we going to interrupt our lesson to take care of something? Are we going to keep going? And we make all these snap decisions right in the moment. And so to be able to do that, you've got to reflect on where you've been. How did this lesson go the last time you taught it? Do you have feedback, from an observation or even from your students? When I taught middle school, especially, I would survey students all the time and just ask them, like, how do you think this went? Is there something I could have done better? Is there some way that maybe we could do this assignment a little bit differently? I didn't always take their advice because sometimes their advice was no homework or let us have free time. If you're an 8th grader, that's your chief objective. But, I did get sometimes some really valuable comments from them. So National Board does not want to hear, I am a perfect teacher. All of my lessons are perfect. 100% of my students are engaged all of the time, because it's not reality. And they know that. Everybody knows that. So you can't go in and say everything that I did was perfect in that lesson. There's going to be something that maybe you could have done a little bit differently. Maybe it would have gone better if you had addressed little Johnny who was rolling around in the floor instead of just ignoring him and hoping he would stop. There's always going to be something that you can reflect on, and they really, really like to see that in your writing. So that's a super important thing not to skip. All right, and then Proposition 5 is that teachers are members of learning communities. Now, this one I think is often misunderstood, and this is a common mistake that I see with candidates that I work with, is that they say, well, I'm a member of our PLC or my grade level team, and that's great. And some of those PLC meetings are even useful sometimes. Not always, but sometimes. So, that's wonderful, and you can definitely write about that. But they want to see what else are you doing that's maybe not something that is required of you by your principal. Who else could you collaborate with? Do you invite in speakers to talk to your students? Do you take your students on field trips? Do you work collaboratively with families, community members? You're kind of trying to create those connections between what you're doing in class and future real world things to make it relevant to what they're learning. And you can do, I mean, this pre-K 12, I mean, you can always be thinking of someone that you could bring in or some way to connect it to something out there in the real world. And that's really what they are looking for. So while you may have a wonderful instructional coach and wonderful grade level team members who are on, helping you out with this and that you have learned amazing things from, but that's not the only thing they want to hear about. They also want to know that you are kind of making these cross connections and you're working collaboratively with other professionals. Now, just the fact that you are here and you are attending this PD, you're already doing that. Right? You are already collaborating with others. So, and you're learning. So that's really what that's about. You are a lifelong learner. You are continuously trying to improve your practice and learn from others and work with others to positively impact your students, because that's what it's all about, is positive impact on students. Okay, let me see if there's any questions that are in the chat right now that I might need to address. And hopefully we'll have some time at the end, but I just wanted to see if there's anything else in there yet. Mostly just about how you couldn't see the video. I don't know what happened with that. Okay, well, I'll keep going. And then at the end, you may have some questions that you think of. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to talk about what I like to call the blueprint. And this is what National Boards refers to as the architecture of accomplished teaching. I really would like to get that red mark off my screen, but I don't know how to do it. Okay, well, we'll just go on. Oh, look, there's Sylvester. Okay, this, when I was doing my national board writing, somebody showed me this, and I thought, I don't get that at all. I don't understand what they're talking about. I don't think that that will be useful to me, and I kind of just put it to the side and ignored it. And then as I started doing my writing, I realized how valuable this is. This is a wonderful graphic. And I later, as I was writing and I was editing my writing, pulling this out and being able to make sure that I was going through this was invaluable to me. So I'm going to kind of go through step by step this architecture of accomplished teaching. All right, so you start out with your knowledge of students. So that is number one. You know your students. When I say you know your students, I'm talking about the students who are in your class right now or on the first day of school, the students that are in the group that you are going to be writing about. Learn as much as you can about those students. And I would strongly suggest when you go in, like first weeks of school, survey your kids. Get to know as much as you can about them. I mean, even if they're in kindergarten, they can tell you if they have a favorite book or story or movie. They can tell you stories that they like or don't like. Get to know your kids. As they are older, you can start looking at things like, past test scores and stuff like that. But you want to know as much as you can about those kids who are in your room right now. Not kids that you had last year, not hypothetical students that you might have, or your dream class that exists in your head. The kids that are in front of you right now. You got to know where are they? What do they need? How can I arrange my lessons and figure out what order I need to present things in to help them to be able to learn and help them to be able to achieve? So this is just where you start. I know my kids. Okay. And as you are writing, being able, especially on the ones where you have to do student work samples, being able to sort of paint a picture of that student that you're using their work sample for your assessor is great. And they really like that. All right, so now you know your kids. You spent some weeks, you spent some time, you surveyed them. Maybe you did, survey their parents or talk to their coaches or whatever, and you feel like you have a pretty good handle on knowing where to start. Okay. So the first thing that we do as teachers, we're going to set goals, right? We're going to set goals for these kids. So we want to set high goals. We want to have high expectations. We want them to be appropriate for those students, the students that you know that you have right now at this time in this setting in your classroom, right? That's what we got to know. Okay. The next thing is we're teachers, so we're going to teach. Okay. We're going to teach our students based on those goals. So we know our kids, we set goals for them. Now we are implementing our instruction and we are designing our instruction to help these students that we know reach those goals that we just set that are high, worthwhile, and appropriate. All right, so now we've taught. We've taught our lesson or we've taught our unit or whatever it is that we're doing. And we're going to move on to 4, which is to evaluate their learning, right? You taught them, now you got to test them. Okay. Now, this doesn't mean a big summative evaluation at the end of a unit. It can be, different types of formative assessments. It can be exit tickets. It can be, surveys, thumbs up, thumbs down. How do you feel like you're doing? Do you feel like you know this? Are you ready to take a test or no? But you're going to evaluate their learning in light of the goals that you set for those students that you know and the instruction that you implemented that was designed by you to attain those goals. All right. Part 5, this is our reflection piece. We're going to reflect on the effectiveness of our instruction. So we taught the lesson, we evaluated it. We evaluated the students. Now we got to think. So was I an effective teacher? Did the lessons that I generated for these students at this time, in this setting, for these goals, in that instruction, did they meet the goals? If they did, that's awesome. What did you do that helped 100% of your students to meet those goals? If 100% of your students didn't meet the goals, then what do you do next? Do you reteach? Do you do small groups? Do you offer tutoring during your planning time? What do you do? That's your decision. So you're going to reflect on what went well and what needed improvement, and then you're going to decide, make that decision, what to do next. Okay. So, because you want your students to meet those goals. At that point, we set new goals. So it all starts back again down here at the bottom. And as you are writing for national boards, this is what they want to see. They want to see your thought process. They want to see where you started with these kids. Who are these kids that you're teaching? What do they need? What are your goals? How did you teach them? How did you test them? What did you do next? Okay, what's the next goal? Okay. So it may look like not much now, but eventually this will be very, very helpful to you as you are writing. Okay. All right, next drill, reading instructions. So right now what I'm going to do is talk about the 4 components. Okay, and I've got a slide for each one. I'll put this one up here. Component 1 is a computer-based test. It's about content knowledge. It's also about your pedagogy. So knowledge of your content and also knowledge of how to teach that content. It has a multiple choice section that they like to call selected response, which is just a nice way of saying multiple choice. And then there are 3 constructed responses, which is another fancy way of saying you have to write an essay. So you have 45 multiple choice questions and 3 essay questions. There is a study guide. We'll talk about that. Component 2, 3, and 4 are all portfolios where you will do written work to analyze the decisions that you made and analyze student work samples and that sort of thing. So component 2 is a portfolio that's all about differentiation. Component 2 has different instructions depending on what your content area is, what you've chosen for your certificate area. So if you are working on component 2 and your neighbor is also working on component 2, but you got different certificate areas, maybe you're reading and they're math, your instructions for component 2 are not going to be the same. So that's a really important thing to know. Also, the main thing with component 2 is you want to show that your students that you've chosen to highlight with their work samples that they have shown growth over time. In component 3, this is a scary one. This is about videos. You're going to video 2 lessons, and you're going to show student engagement with you, student engagement with each other. You know, that we'll get into that a little bit more. That one always is the one that scares people. It's really not that bad, I promise. Component 4, then component 4, to me, that was my least favorite. I think component 4 is that bad. There are a lot of different sections of component 4. It is a big portfolio of work. It basically shows your knowledge of your students and then also your knowledge of your school or district. So we'll get into that in just a second. All right. Are there questions? Are there any questions that I need to answer before I go on through the components? Appreciate that image is on the National Board website, and also in this this slideshow that you have you'll have access to it, so you'll also be able to get to that link where I pulled it from. Let's see, Julie, block schedule. You can choose. You can write about students first semester or second semester. That is completely up to you. So you can choose what you want to do. So I taught high school. I taught on a block schedule for a while. I did not do my national boards while I was teaching on a block schedule, but I understand the challenges that come with that. So what you will probably want to do is just read your instructions really carefully starting out, and you can start that now. Everything that's on the National Board website, you can get to it for free right now, and go ahead and decide what you want to do. And then you can decide, like, okay, I'm going to do this second semester, or I'm going to start on it first semester. Now you can still write about the students that you taught first semester and, work on your writing second semester. You just would have to pull those work samples and things first. Let's see. Kelly, it does say component 1, but you can take them in any order that you want to. And okay, Brooke, if you spread your process out over multiple years, no. You will write about the students that you have right then. So if you are, if you started component 2, 1 year, and you've registered for component 2 that year, you're going to turn everything in May for that year. So then the next year, when you're doing like component 3 or component 4, you would work with the class that you have at that time. So yeah, if you have to spread it out over multiple years, I mean, think about if you were 4 years later, those students that you taught in 8th grade, now they are seniors. So, so you wouldn't want to still be writing about them. Let's see, Brianna. Yes, if you loop with your students, you can use the same class. You are just writing about the students that you have right then when you're writing. Now you can sometimes do some videos like I need to look at that. I think sometimes you can do a video 1 year and then write about it the next year, but there's some pretty good guidelines for that. And you probably would not want to, you probably want to write about kids that you have right now. I mean, just honestly, you're going to want to write about the ones that you've got. So, let's see, if you do not have assigned students or classes, then you'll have to borrow a class. So, and then Kristen, your demographics, well, likely your demographics won't change, like your school-wide demographics are not going to change very much. But yes, you are going to write about the students that you have at that time. But all of that is very detailed in your component instructions. So, so when you start to get started, don't skip out on reading the instructions. Some people don't read the instructions, and then it becomes a problem. I'm going to see if I can clear those annotations. I don't see that. Wait, is that it? Nope. Okay, sorry, y'all. The red lines are driving me crazy. I don't know if they're driving you crazy or not. Yay, okay, did it. All right, now I can go on. Okay, so component 1 is the content knowledge. This is a test. This is the most normal, I guess, part of national boards if you've taken a Praxis, it's very similar. You go into a test center, they check to make sure that you're not bringing in anything that would help you cheat. You get 60 minutes to answer about 45 multiple choice questions, or like I said, selected response. Then you have 30 minutes each to write your 3 constructed responses. Those are all going to be in the study guide that is provided for you by National Board. Especially the constructed response questions, you will want to look at their examples very carefully. They are not going to be identical, but they are going to be very similar. And I know from my own experience and just, from speaking to other people in different content areas, everyone has told me that their constructed response questions are very similar to what they saw in the study guide. So I would look at that very closely. I would practice writing out responses to that. So if you're a math teacher, you may want to try those types of questions with different numbers, get, something to generate some similar questions for you and practice that with a timer. Depending on your content area, some of them are very content knowledge heavy. Like in math, you may have to solve a lot of math problems. In reading, it's very teaching heavy. Like, how would you solve this problem? You have a student who, this is their reading record, and how would you solve this? So it's a mix of both content knowledge and pedagogy. There are sample questions in the study guide. Use that in the Component 1 guide. Use those. There are a lot of people out there who are trying to make money off of National Board candidates. So there are study guides out there that exist. I don't know that they're helpful. What I would suggest that you do is to ask other people who have gone through the same certificate that you are doing and ask them, what did you use to study? And that would probably be a lot more helpful. Now, they may tell you that they used a study guide and that it was wonderful and really helped them, in which case you might want to look at that study guide. But for mine, for early middle childhood literacy, I did not use a study guide, and I scored pretty well on the test. Now, if you are a good test taker, and some of us are great test takers, and some of us are not good test takers, and some people have a lot of test anxiety. And so if you know that that is you, you may want to spend more time practicing, coming up with questions and doing some
Perfect. Thank you so much.
practice tests.
Bye.
But anyway, but I would not recommend right off the bat spending a lot of money on a study guide. A lot of folks out there try to make money off of candidates, and most of the regional in-service centers will provide candidates with books by Bobby McGee Faulkner. She also runs a Facebook page. She is kind of considered like one of the experts. And so her books are good. But like I said, I think a lot of the in-service centers have those for their candidates or can show you where to get them. So I would rely on my mentors from Rick Center or Rick Center is redundant, but anyway, Regional In-Service Center, and ask them for their expertise and what to do about that. Okay, so again, if you are deciding between certificate areas, Component 1 guide would be a great place to look at the 2 that you're trying to decide between and decide which one of those looks like something that you're more comfortable taking that test in. All right, moving on. It will let me move on. Okay, Component 2. So again, Component 2 is a portfolio. Component 2 also has different instructions depending on what content area you are in. So in this case, you really want to read the instructions. And if you're between 2 certificates, look at those instructions for Component 2. I know that I have in literacy, when I did mine, we only had to showcase one student. Well, there were 2 different parts to it. So I think I had 2, but anyway, my math teacher friend had to showcase like 4 students, and she panicked. I had her look over my, just kind of read it and make sure it makes sense. And she was like, you don't have enough. And I was like, well, yeah, my instructions said this. And so then we realized, oh, our instructions are very different. So make sure that you are following your instructions and you're not listening to somebody else say, well, you have to have 4 students, because maybe you don't, or maybe you do. So look at your instructions for that. It is a classroom-based portfolio where you're going to choose students from your classroom that you're currently teaching. You're going to pull work samples for them. And my advice for that is to start early and often pulling work samples. What if you have chosen a couple of kids and they're great and you think that this is going to be wonderful, and then one of them moves over Christmas and there you are. So it's much better to have a lot of work samples and then leave some aside. You can toss those out at the end, but it's great to have more than you need. It's really hard to go back and get those if you don't have them. In this portfolio, you are going to analyze your students' work samples. You're going to show how the decisions that you made and how you differentiated instruction for these students had an impact on their learning. And then you're going to reflect about maybe what you would have done differently, or why you think that the choices that you made were effective. So this portfolio is actually the shortest written portfolio that you will do. So some people like to start with component 2. Personally, I did components 1 and 2 my first year, and then I did 3 and 4 the second year. Some folks do that complete opposite. So some people like to do component 1 at the very end because they feel like doing all this prep work and doing all these portfolios is going to help them with the test. So it's really just kind of a thing that you have to decide on your own. Okay, component 3. I call this one lights, camera, action. People are terrified of this, or at least I was terrified to do this. So in component 3, this is about your teaching practice and your learning environment. And this is where you're going to want to take advantage of that Atlas link that you were emailed, because there are lots of great examples on the Atlas site where you can watch other teachers and see what they are doing and read some commentary. So in this portfolio, you are going to video yourself in 2 different modalities of teaching. So that might be a whole group lesson. It might be a small group lesson that you have pulled students for. It could be like a one-on-one session, just depending on you and your classroom situation. So if you are, for example, a special ed teacher and you only work with small groups, then, you're maybe going to do a small group with 5 students and a small group with 2 students, or, a one-on-one session. If you are a classroom teacher, then, you've kind of got more options. You could do a whole group, you can do a small group, all those things, but they want to see 2 different modalities here. The focus is that they want to see how you engage your students, how the decisions that you're making impact their learning. They want to see students involved in their learning process. They want to see you interact with your students, and they want to see the students interact with each other. Then you're going to write about it. You're going to describe what was happening in the classroom, like what part of the unit or what part of the lesson this is. You're going to analyze what you did as a teacher and how the students interacted with each other and how they interacted with you. And then you're going to reflect on what you might have done differently. Or again, what went well. I don't mean to harp on the negative, because a lot of things are going to go well. These videos can only be 15 minutes long. You do not have to include your entire lesson in the 15 minutes. You have to choose continuous 15 minutes. So you can't show 5 minutes from the beginning of class and 5 minutes from the middle of class and 5 minutes at the end of class. You have to choose a solid 15 minutes. You will have release forms that National Boards created that you will send home with your students, and you do have to have their permission or their parents' permission to video them. I did not really have problems with this. I wrote a letter when I sent these home with my students, both for my board initially certifying, and then also when I did my MOC. And I just wrote a letter and said, this is what I'm doing. I am going to do a video of my class, but it is not about your child. and nobody is going to see it except the assessors, and they are really watching me teach. They are not looking at your child. Your child will not be identified by name, you know, all that kind of stuff. But 15 minutes out of your class. And my advice on this also is start early and record often. You do not have to have anything fancy. Some schools have the swivel cameras that will follow you around. Some people like to invite somebody in and have them video you teaching. I personally put my cell phone on my iPhone on a shelf, and I did have a cordless mic that I bought from Amazon. It was really cheap, and I just kind of carries a little small mic, and I just carried it around the room with me, so that they could definitely pick up the audio, because I'm sometimes a mumbler. I don't have a great teacher voice, but anyway, managed to do it anyway. But I have that, and then when my students were in small groups working on a lesson, I could drop that microphone at their table, and then that way I could write about what they were saying to each other, and it was able to be picked up on the microphone, because students are going to be really nervous about this. They, sometimes they act really goofy, which is why I want you to video early and video often, so that they get used to the idea of being on camera. Eventually, maybe they will kind of forget about it. So, you are always going to have one student who does something completely goofy, especially if you teach middle school. When I was videoing, I had 7th graders, and they're going to do something goofy. Somebody's going to make a funny face or stare at the camera or pick their nose or, do any manner of things. But it's okay, because the assessors don't want to see a perfect classroom. If your classroom looks too perfect, then it looks like you tried to engineer it to be perfect. And as someone who is a little bit of a perfectionist sometimes, and tried to once pull a class into my planning period so that I could have a perfect class, it didn't work. Those students are going to rat you out. So just do it with your real class. And then also, you never know when something weird might happen. When I finished my certification, it was in 2020, and I saved component 3 for that second year. And so I had practiced, I videoed some classes, and then we all went home on March the 13th, and we never went back. And my district, I was in a pretty rural district, and we didn't do Zoom or Google Meets or anything like that. We would, if we tried to do it, nobody showed up. So I just had to use the videos that I had practiced with that were on my phone, and it was fine. But, you just never know. So don't wait until May, or April to do your videos. Start early, start often. You only have to have 15 minutes to show. So, you never know where that 15 minutes is going to be in. For me, the most painful part of the process is watching myself teach and listening to myself sound like cornbread when I'm talking to students. But it's just part of being a teacher from Alabama. So, it's okay. They are okay with it. They expect it. They don't expect a perfect classroom. All right, component 4. This one is called Effective and Reflective Practitioner, and this one is also a portfolio. It has multiple parts. It is you're going to share about how you generate data from your assessments and how you use that data to inform your instruction. You're going to talk about how you participate in learning communities and how you have impacted your students by your participation in learning communities. You're going to identify a need that your students have. It could be a need within your classroom. It could be a need like within your school or your grade level or your subject area. And then you are going to find ways to help solve that need, fill that need. You're also going to be looking for a professional need, that maybe there's a professional need at your school that, teachers need training in this or that. And you're going to find ways to fill that need as well. And then a lot of reflection here. So component 4 is often referred to as the beast. And I certainly felt that it was, but again, I was doing this after we had gone home for COVID, and I couldn't go anywhere. Like all the libraries were closed, and I had 2 little kids at home. So I was just praying to be finished with it. So I'm probably not the best person to ask for advice on component 4. I can probably help you out a lot on 2 and 3 and maybe 1, but component 4 was not my favorite. but it is some people's favorite. Fortunately for me, it is not worth that many points. So this is how the certification scores are weighted. Me not being a math person, this is a little over my head sometimes when I think about it. So components 1 and 3 are weighted very heavily. Your score on component 3 with those 2 videos and you're writing about those and analyzing those, that is worth 30% of your total score. Component 1 is each of the constructive response items are worth 6.67%. And then the selected response items are worth 20%. And when I say 6.7%, I don't mean 6.7% of the test. I mean of your overall total score for a national board. So components 1 and 3 weigh very heavily. That's, 70% of your score, total score, comes from component 1 and component 3. Now, if you notice up here for component 1, the constructive response items, they are each 6.67, and that selected response is 20%. In component 1, if you need to do a retake to raise your score, you may choose to only redo certain parts of that component. That is the only one. The rest of them, like you can't just redo one video in component 3. If you have to redo component 3, you got to do the whole thing over again. Same thing for 4 and 2. But for component 1, you can redo part of the constructive response, or you could maybe just redo, like if you have bad test anxiety and you second guess yourself on those multiple choice questions and you didn't do great on that and you want to retake just the selective response items, you can do that. But since these two weigh so heavily, and that's 70% of your score, the other 30% come from components 2 and 4. So each of those components only weigh 15% of the total score. There is a scoring guide, and it will take you all through how to do that and how to calculate that. It really is not, it really is not super helpful until you have some scores back, because once you have some scores back, then you can start plugging those into the score calculator, and it will tell you like, what do you need on the other components, which is how I knew after doing 1 and 2 that, and if I did okay on component 3, then I didn't have to worry quite as much about component 4, being that we were home during COVID. So that was real helpful to me, and it might be to you. Now, if you're doing all 4 of them in a year, then you're not going to have any scores to go on until they all come back. And hopefully you'll pass it the very first time and be done. But if not, then you can plug those scores into the score calculator and see what you might want to do about retakes. All right, I'm going to talk just briefly about writing. I do have a whole session on writing for National Board that's in person tomorrow. I think that there are probably also some writing sessions that have been recorded, or maybe some later. I'm not really sure about the rest of the day's schedule. So 4 C's, though, that you want to keep in mind as you're writing. You want to be clear, consistent, convincing, and concise. A lot of people say 3 C's, clear, consistent, convincing, and that's great.
Why is there not a sign-in sheet?
I was an English teacher, and I am pretty wordy, and so I needed that reminder about being concise. You got to trim it down. So I kind of address that first. Your space is at a premium when you're doing this. You don't have room. If you're an English teacher and you're a writing teacher and you like to use lots of flowery phrases and adverbs, and you teach your students not to abbreviate in their writing and to write out the number THREE instead of using the number 3, or using an ampersand instead of typing out the word AND, it's going to be hard for you. It was difficult for me to get past that, because here I was teaching grammar and formal writing to these students, and then I was going back and writing, and I was having to use tons of abbreviations and cut out all of my pretty phrases. They're going to give you a number of pages, and they're going to give you a list of questions, and those assessors, they don't read anything over that allotted number of pages. If they say you have 12 pages, double spaced, 12-point Arial font, 1-inch margins, That's what they read, and that's it. And they are very, very careful about that. I'll also throw in a little note here about AI. They do not allow the use of AI. Now, it does say that maybe you can use it for grammar. I would not recommend it. I would not want anything to come between me and achieving national board certification. And I just wouldn't, I wouldn't chance it. I would let an English teacher read it and, let your mentor read it and, let other people look at it. Let them, let other people put eyes on it. I would try really hard to avoid any temptation to use AI in this because they are very stringent about that. So let's talk about being clear. So when I say clear, it means that your instructional goals that you have set, they have to be clear. The person who is reading it and assessing it, they have to know what your goal is. If they can't understand what your goal is for the students, your score is going to be really low. They want to understand your goal. So that's why I'm saying it must be very clear about what it is that you have set out for your students to do and why these activities help them meet those goals. So moving on to consistent, the activities in that lesson have to be consistent with the goals you set. These concepts that you're introducing and the evidence that you're presenting in the way of student work samples, all of those things have to be connected. So one example of this, of a thing not to do. So a lot of candidates that I work with, especially on component 3, because they're doing a video, they want to do a really cool activity. They want it, this is the first year that you're teaching and you want to put on a dog and pony show when your administrator comes in. That's what they want to do on video. And it's fine. And you can do a really cool activity as part of your video if you want to. Okay? Not saying don't do that. But sometimes those really cool activities don't 100% match up with our stated objective. So you've got to be able to write about and talk about and analyze how those activities that you chose are helping those students meet that goal that you've already set. How is that activity helping them to meet those instructional objectives? So if they don't seem connected, or if they're very lightly connected, then you may want to choose a different activity, or you may want to rewrite your goals. And then you have to be convincing. So you want to think like an attorney here. You want to think about proving your case. You are trying to prove to your assessor that you meet those 5 core propositions, that you incorporate those in your teaching. You're aware of your students. You have reflected. You know the amount of progress that those students have made. And then you made these choices yourself. You don't want to talk about other people in this. Teachers sometimes want to give credit to others and they want to say, well, my team and I, my co-teacher and I, we made this decision. No, the assessor does not care about your co-teacher. They don't want to know what your instructional aide did. They don't want to know anything about any of that. They want to know what you did. They want to see you in that classroom and they want to see you in that writing. So everything, you're going to feel like you're bragging on yourself. And sometimes we don't like to do that and toot our own horns, but you have to. So I did this, I made this choice, I had this impact on these students. And here, I will show you these work samples. I will show you this video. This video is my evidence of how I interacted with my students. Okay. And then again, you want to be concise. Your space is at a premium. You don't have room for stuff. You have to use their guidelines. Don't chance it. Don't risk being, getting a 0 or a not score because you wanted to fudge the margins a little bit, or instead of it being double spaced, you made it like 1.9. There are a few tricks that you can use, and you'll just have to kind of try, hyphenations and stuff like that to get everything in there. You want to use as much space as you can because, the more evidence that you're giving them, the better. But, you want your words to be intentional. Okay. You can't, this is not like going back in, 11th grade and writing a paper and you're trying to add like lots of words like however to kind of take up more space. Can't do that here. You want all of your words to be intentional. You want all of them to carry meaning, and the assessors are not going to read anything extra. So, start out with the whole thing, and then you can edit it down. I will also say just be very, very careful about the page limits and the instructions for how to format the pages, because my friend that was the math teacher next door, she had done a fantastic job. This is the very first one that she was writing. She had done such a great job. This was component 2, and she had written it, and she took it to a mentor at the in-service center for them to read. And she did not realize that it had to be double spaced. So she had written the full 12 pages, single spaced. And she cried a lot. So she had to cut that in half. And it was really, really difficult. Now, she did fine. And again, she passed. She did everything in a year and passed it. But that was a huge eye-opener for her. So make sure that, she's a cautionary tale. I tell her now, like I talk about you in my session. You want to be really careful about that. Okay. The next thing is to read your standards. When people refer to your standards for national boards, they are talking about the national board standards. Each certificate area has their own. Again, if you are trying to choose between 2 different certificate areas, read those standards and see which one you feel most comfortable with. This is not the state course of study standard. So you may, and you probably will, I hope that you do, if you're teaching in Alabama, that you're looking at the Alabama course of study for planning your lessons, because that's what we have to do as teachers in Alabama. But this is not the standards that we were talking about when you're writing for national board. They want to see how you meet the national board standards. So you want to study that language. You want to use their own words. Print those things out. Do not just try to look at them on your screen. Print them out and have them next to you. Highlight those things. Use Post-it notes. Use sticky notes. If by the end of your certificate journey, your standards are still sitting there and they are pristine and are untouched, that's probably a red flag. So read your standards, read them and read them and read them and read them and read them. And that will even also help you to study for that component 1 test, because sometimes when you're looking at those multiple choice answers, one of them is going to sound a little bit more like the national board answer. And you'll know that if you study those standards. So that's just a really important thing. Print those out, look at them often.
Now, are those in the Pearson login?
Yes, all of that stuff is going to be in your candidate center, and I'll show you that in just a second. Let's see. Oh, yeah, we've still got some time. So I'm going to show you all links to all that stuff. When you are starting to plan your writing, you want to think about, so there's 3 types of writing for national board. Basically, there is descriptive, which is kind of telling what, and then there's analytical. So descriptive, you're telling what your classroom looks like. You're explaining what the students did. It's kind of the easiest type of writing because you're literally just describing what's going on. My students work together in cooperative learning groups of 4 students to complete this scientific investigation about soil or whatever. So that's descriptive. But then talking about why that was important, why you made the choices that you made, and then most importantly, how it impacted their learning. Everything has to come back to how did this impact student learning? If you can't say that it impacted your student learning, then you can't write about it. And I will tell you very quickly my own lesson that I learned about that. So I started my certification in 2018, 2019. And we had just done a huge school transformation. 2 of my colleagues and I transformed our middle school hallway into Hogwarts from Harry Potter. We had 4 classrooms. We did a classroom for each house. We hired someone to paint murals. We did fundraisers. It took us 2 years to do this. It went viral. J.K. Rowling saw it. I know that she's a very controversial figure now, but back then we didn't know. So anyway, so J.K. Rowling came to it. She didn't come to the school herself, but she sent the cast of the Fantastic Beasts movie to our school. Jude Law sat in my classroom, kissed me on the cheek. He smelled wonderful. It was like international. I've never had anything like that happen to me before or since. I was on the Today Show. It was crazy. So all of this stuff had happened, and I wanted to write about that. It was really exciting, and my students loved it. Loved it. I was at a really, really high poverty school, and we had really endeavored to make this. We didn't try to go viral. That just kind of happened, but we were trying to make this a really good space for these students that sometimes did not have a good space at home, and we wanted them to want to come to school. And so that was what we wanted to do with this. But I really couldn't prove that it impacted their learning, not in a way that I could have really analyzed it and reflected on it and done the things that I needed to do for national board. So I started writing about it, and I took it to a mentor that I've been assigned through Athens State. And she said, "This is great. I'm super impressed that this happened. I want to come see your classroom. But what does this have to do with that?" And she was right. And I think I probably cried, but I couldn't write about it, and I threw it out and started that part over. So, and you may do that. You may have to start over sometimes, and that's okay. Let's see. Do we want to go into the chat again? Is there anything, Robin, in there that you see that I need to address right now?
Yes, there were some questions about resubmitting components, how many times you would be able to resubmit components.
Okay. You can resubmit as many times as you want to, I suppose. You have 5 years to complete your certification. So if you can retake the test as many times as you can within that 5 years. Somebody's asked, Elizabeth asked, how much does the test cost? I do not remember the exact amount of the test right now, but all of that information is available on the National Board website. All of the study guides and those things that I've told you about, all of that stuff is on the National Board website. So you have 5 years to reach a score of 110. So as many times within that 5 years as you want to retake something, you can. Of course, the objective is to do it the first time, especially if you happen to have received the state scholarship. The state scholarship pays for one attempt. Now, somebody has asked, I think this is Harriet had asked, if I register for all 4 components this year and I'm not able to complete them, will I be penalized? Okay, so I think that I'm going to address that in just a little bit, but I'll go ahead and tell you now because I think there's several people that are asking questions about retakes. You do have to pay for the components again. If you retake a component, you have to do it again. But you don't have to pay for anything or register for anything until the February before you submit. Now, the submission window usually opens toward the end of April, and you have until the end of May to submit those components. In fact, I think I have over here let's see. Okay, so the withdrawal deadline or the registration deadline, you have until February 28th to register for that and commit to that. Now, after that, you got to follow through with it. But you should know by February if that component is something that you really want to commit to or not. By the end of February, if you haven't started on it, you might not want to register it for that year. You may want to wait until the next cycle. So the test window opens, the component 1 test is open from March 1st to June the 15th. So you'll register for that in February, and then they will send you a link, and then you go and choose your test date. And depending on where you're going to go take that test, then, different test centers have different hours and different dates that they can offer the test. So you'll just schedule that yourself, just like if you were scheduling a praxis exam. So you have from March 1st to June the 15th to take the test. You have this year, they have extended, and I had forgotten about this, they have extended the submission window until June 15th. So you have from April 1st to June the 15th to submit your components. So that does give you a little bit of time there at the end of the school year so that teachers are not scrambling with that, the madness in May and graduations and, retention committee and all those kinds of things that we have to do at the end of the school year and counting textbooks and taking up Chromebooks and all that stuff. So at least, because I think in the past it has always been like about May 15th, right there in the middle. So you have until June 15th. So that's going to be helpful. But you do not have to pay for anything. You do not have to register for anything until the end of February. But in the meantime, you have access to all of the instructions. So, you should be able to look at those and know by the end of February if it's something that you're going to be able to do.
There was another question in the chat about AI. When you say AI, is the website Grammarly considered AI?
I think that Grammarly is probably okay. I would not run it through like Claude or ChatGPT or any of those like generative, AI. I would stay away from that. And I think, I think Grammarly is probably about as far as you could push it. But, I wouldn't let Grammarly like rewrite it. But if they say like, oh, you've left out a comma or you need to capitalize this word, then that's fine. Now, keep in mind, though, that because you are going to be using abbreviations, that it may flag some of your abbreviations. So, you'll just kind of have to look for that. Okay, Celeste has asked about using Microsoft Word for formatting. I used Microsoft Word and Google Docs interchangeably. I did not have any formatting issues, but if you have access to Microsoft Word, I feel like that's kind of the standard. So what I would do when I was doing mine, just to make it easy to share between, and it's been a few years. So just to make it easy to share between computers, I would do all of it and save it in my Google Drive so that I could open it up at school. I could open it up at home, wherever I was. But then I think I transferred everything to Microsoft Word. I just copied and pasted it into Microsoft Word. And then you'll have to save everything as PDFs. So you'll have to compress it all and put it all into a PDF.
There was another question in the chat that said, I completed component 1 prior to getting the scholarship. If I have to retake component 1, will the scholarship pay for that component?
Ooh, I don't know. I want to say no.
Well, I was going to say, I think I'll take that question. There is a session tomorrow for NBCT scholarship recipients. Dr. Shields and Dr. Boyd Rogan are doing that session. It will be at 3:00. And if you're here face to face, however, remember all sessions are being recorded. So if you have a question, if you will go to the Connection Cafe today and put that question in the Connection Cafe, then they'll make sure that it's addressed tomorrow in that session.
Okay, and I see that comment now in the chat. Candace asked, what's the format for submitting and how many pages? That will all be in your instructions. So again, read your instructions very carefully. When I just remember this from component 2, that when I did component 2, my page limit was, I think it was 12 pages, and it was 12-point Arial font. It was 1-inch margins, and there are some specific things that you have to do, but all of that is very detailed in the instructions. And again, I would recommend printing out the instructions. It's a lot of paper. But I would recommend whatever component you're working on, look at them on screen first and kind of look at it and decide which one you want to work on first. But once you've decided that this is what I'm going to work on, print those out. So many candidates don't read the instructions. And, we are teachers. And when we tell our students, read the instructions, now maybe not if you're, a kindergarten teacher, but, I I'm a middle school teacher. Read the instructions and then ask me a question. But there are a lot of people that don't read the instructions and then they make very simple errors that could have been corrected. Now, sometimes the instructions are kind of vague. And in that case, that's when you're going to want to ask for clarification. And you can ask a mentor for that. You can have somebody help you walk you through it. But definitely read those instructions, highlight it. Shanice asked about the first step in starting the process. The first step we're going to talk about in just a second, but it's going to be making an account on the National Board website and looking at all of the components and everything else. So some of the stuff I'm going to be talking a little bit more about in a few minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and move on with the rest of the slideshow, and then I'll answer any other questions that you guys have.
Okay, can you answer one other question
Sure,
about
of course.
the scholarship session for the participants that receive the scholarship? You may, if you're able to register for today's scholarship session, is saying invitation only. By all means, please attend that session. However, if for some reason you are not able to attend it, remember that all of the sessions are being recorded and that you will be able to access it even after this meeting.
Yes.
And you all will also have the support from your regional in-service center directors.
Yes, there's so much support out there now. I mean, it just grows every year, and it's really heartening to see the people who are willing to give back and to help others through the process. So it's very nice. My mom was a teacher, and she was one of the first groups that did National Board Certification, and her process was very different than mine. I think I was in college when she went through it, but back then there was almost nothing. There was no boot camp. There was you and a box and all these printed pages of instructions and things that you had to do and submit. So it's really nice to see that there's a lot of help available now and a lot of people to answer your questions. So this is not the only chance you're going to get to ask questions, I promise.
Absolutely.
All right. Okay, so some reasons that candidates don't earn certifying scores. And again, you're going to get this. It's got these links on it to the score calculator, the scoring guide. There are rubrics for everything. So number one is that you didn't answer all the questions. So in each of your components that you are going to be writing for, you are going to have in your instructions a list of questions. What I did when I was working on this is I typed out that list of questions or just copied and pasted them into my Google Doc. And when I was working on it, I would type underneath the question. Now, you're not going to leave those questions in there. After you are finished and you've had other people look at it, you've had a mentor read over it, whatever, then you're going to go back and you're going to delete the question out because the assessor doesn't need to see the questions. They have the list of questions. They want to just read your answers. So, and you're not going to have space for all those questions in there anyway. So you're going to want to make sure that you have answered all the prompts. So to me, the easiest thing was to put the prompts in there and then underneath it, answer that so that you make sure you have answered every question they have asked you. Number two, we've already talked about this a little bit. The instructional goals are not clear. So if the assessor doesn't understand what the goal is that you've set for your students and why the lessons that you're teaching and the assessments that you've chosen align with that goal, that's a big red flag. That's gonna get a low score. The assignments that you have chosen to highlight. Now, this is specifically about like showing work samples for students. If you have chosen, a student to highlight and you show, they're writing from the beginning of the year and then they're writing from later in the year, and you want to show improvement. So if the second assignment is not as good as the first assignment, if they've, gone down, then that would probably not be a good one to put out there for the assessors to look at. You might want to find a different student to highlight, which is why I told you to get work samples early and often. Another thing, and I see this a lot with the candidates that I work with, the portfolio writing describes what the artifact is, what the evidence is, or what the lesson looked like, or what the classroom looked like, or what the students were doing. And they just describe it and they just tell you this is what happened. That's one part of it, but the meat of your portfolio is going to be that analyzing. So you've got to look at, yes, the students did this activity. Here's why they did that activity. Here's why I chose for them to do that activity. Here's why I graded the activity like I did. Here is what I learned about my students learning by analyzing their work. So what did this reveal to me as a teacher? And then how am I going to use what that revealed to me in my next lesson? Okay. And then the last one, again, I mentioned reflection, feedback. It's very important. People ask a lot if the student work samples that you turn in, do those have to be graded work samples? No, you're not going to see anything that says that they must be graded, but I turned in work samples with my comments on them so that they could see that I was giving students feedback and valuable feedback that they could then take and use. Now, we all know that that's a perfect world. The students are looking at all of those comments you wrote in red or green or purple ink on their essay, and they're taking all of those to heart. We know that they are. But, whether the student took it to heart and actually used your comments to improve their writing or not, we need to show that you gave the students feedback. And then hopefully you'll have another work sample later that shows that they did understand what you were doing, and they've showed some growth. So those are the 5 reasons mainly that candidates don't earn certifying scores. And the other reason that is not on here is just not following instructions. People making edits in their videos. You can't edit your video. You can trim off the beginning and you can trim off the end, but you got to have, you can have 10 to 15 minutes. That's it. They're not going to watch more than 15 minutes. You can describe what happened before and after the 15 minutes, but, sometimes people edit their videos and there's very, very few reasons that would be allowed. So I can't stress enough to read and follow the instructions. But anyway, when you get this, this will be in the drive for you guys, and you can get to that scoring calculator and the scoring guide and the rubrics, and all of that is available on the National Board website. Okay, a lot of people have asked about certificate areas. So there are 25 different certificate areas, and this is how you can determine your certificate area. Some people teach one class all day, and that class only fits into one thing, and that is fine. Okay, and so they already know what certificate area that they are going into, and that's great for them. Some people have some choices. So when I did my national boards, I was teaching middle school English. And yes, I certified in early and middle childhood literacy. So if you look at early and middle childhood literacy over here on this graphic on the left, you can see the age bands there that are for literacy, reading, language arts. Early and middle childhood is ages 3 to 8 and ages 7 to 12. So with the group of students that you are choosing to highlight, the group that you're writing about, more than 50% of your students must be within that age band. This was a little bit challenging to me because I had to make sure to do like my videos and things early in the year. Now I did I'm sorry. Somebody talking. 50% of your students have to be in that age band. Now, when I did my maintenance, I was teaching 3rd grade reading, and that was super easy because they all fit into there very easily. But like when I did my whole group video first semester, because most of my students were 12, okay, in 7th grade. If I had done it 2nd semester, I would have had to be really careful about how many students I had that were over 12. So, if you're at the edge of an age band, you do want to kind of watch that because 50% of them must be within the age band. So like here, if you were doing like early adolescent social studies, and that's ages 11 through 15, and you teach 5th grade, and that's what you really want to do your certificate in, then you need to make sure that more than half of your students that you were writing about were in the age band 11 to 15. So again, every certificate has its own standards and its own directions. Now, I think that for components 3 and 4, most of the instructions are the same, but read yours anyway, just in case there has been a change. Always read yours.
Look, let's go. Let's go.
All right. This sometimes
Let's see.
will help you to
Hello, this way.
decide what your.
Oh.
Hey, Joanna, I think you need to mute.
I am so sorry.
That's okay. No worries. Happens to everybody. All right. So sometimes this is a little bit controversial. And so what I'm saying is, please do not shoot the messenger. I do not come up with a list of schools and teachers that can get an additional $5,000. I wish that I did, because then I would say everybody should get the additional $5,000, because if you have proven that you're an accomplished teacher, then you deserve an extra $5,000. This, however, is determined by the legislature. Dr. Shields does not decide. Dr. Mackey does not decide. The National Board for Professional Teaching Standards does not decide. I do not decide. When they decided to do this, the purpose of that targeted supplement was to attract and retain accomplished teachers with specific knowledge in certain subject areas in hard-to-staff schools. Now, it has expanded over the years, and I'm going to say that I never got the additional $5,000, even though I was teaching in a high poverty school, and I was teaching, with a certificate in literacy. I never qualified for it. The 1 year that I was at that school that I could have qualified for it, our free and reduced lunch numbers dipped below 75%, and that was the cutoff at the time. Mostly that was because of all the stuff that happened during COVID, and people stopped filling out those forms there for a while. And it's still, it's still hard sometimes to get everybody to fill out those free and reduced lunch forms. And that the community provisions where everybody gets free lunch was not a thing yet. So anyway, I never have qualified for it, but there is a list that comes out every August, and it lists all the schools. If everybody in your district qualifies for free lunch, then you're probably on that list. If you have taught in what they used to call a failing school, if that's where you are and your school is on that list and is getting extra targeted support, then it's probably on the list. The link that is on here is for the 25-26 list. It is a long list. I'm not going to pull it up and try to show you all of it. You can do that. You may know if your school is already on that list or not. So anyway, but maybe something that you want to look at. And if you have a choice in certificate areas and you are teaching in a school that would be likely to remain on that list, that might be something to consider. All right. So some folks have asked, how do you sign up? All right, here's what you do. First step, you're going to go to the National Board website, which is nbpts.org, which stands for National Board for Professional Teaching Standards. And you're going to make an account there. It is free. You can make an account. Anybody can make an account. You have to be a teacher to make an account if you just want to look at it. And go on there, you make an account, and you say, okay, yes, I meet these prerequisites. I have a teaching certificate. I will have 3 years by the end, those sort of things. All right. There is a $75 registration fee per year. The $75 fee is not covered by the scholarship. So that is something that if you are a candidate and you intend to submit components, there is a $75 registration fee. You do not have to pay that fee until February. It is, I think, February 28th. Now, if you do have the scholarship, I think that they ask for you to register earlier in February so that they can confirm what they call a third-party payer. But you do not have to pay that fee until you are 100% sure that you are going to submit a component that year. And then you select the components that you are 100% sure that you can do that year. And then, you know, that's where you can start with like the fees and the paying and the registration. Before February, I wouldn't pay for anything because you don't know what's going to happen between now and then. What if you have a really challenging year this year? You just don't know. So I would not sign up right now and say, I'm going to submit 4 components this year and pay for those 4 components. And then, something happens and you just can't. And you don't know in July what's going to happen in your life in January. So hopefully nothing bad's going to happen. Everything's going to be great. And you're going to have a wonderful school year and you're not going to be stressed out and it's going to be wonderful. And you're going to just sail into this. But just in case, unless you have the money to burn, I would not pay anything until February. In the meantime, you can access every bit of everything that you need on the website. All the component instructions, all of the guides, everything is on that website. You can also reach out to your regional in-service center. They're going to start having cohort meetings probably in August or by September, I would expect. And they're going to start, getting into that and telling you stuff. So go ahead and let them know that this is something that you want to do. Joining a cohort is great. If you are in a large school system, they may already have a cohort in your school even. That was not a thing. I was not in a school and not in a district that was particularly supportive of national boards. But there are other ways to join a cohort. They don't have to be in your school. It can be very informal. There might be other teachers in your district. You can send an email out or something and say, hey, is there anybody else that's going through national boards? I'm thinking about doing this. Is there anybody else wants to do it with me? Because if you have somebody just to bounce ideas off of and just to talk to, it's really great. Obviously, your in-service center is going to be your number one source of support. They can help you find a mentor. They will have sessions about each component. They're really going to be a great, great source of support for you. I know that sometimes some of us live a long way from our in-service center. And if that is a problem, sometimes they have cohorts that meet, in different places. So, that might be a possibility. Some of them sometimes will meet online. You can do Zoom, all that sort of stuff. You can join the Alabama MBCT network. We have a Facebook group that's pretty active. Lots of people there that are willing to give advice and support. I'm a facilitator through AEA for the AEA Jumpstart program. So if you are an AEA member, that is completely free. And we meet once a month on Zoom. And it's me and Mary Gardunia, if any of you know her. Mary's up in Madison County. And then Angela Smith, who's a principal in Birmingham. And then sometimes we have different people that kind of come in and out. But we have these meetings where you can log in, you can ask questions. We try to do whatever you need. Sometimes we have very structured meetings, and sometimes it's just show up, ask a question. We'll answer your question, and then you say, okay, thank you, bye. So it's pretty much whatever you need. And I'll have information about that here in a second. We will try to find you a mentor. If your regional in-service center is probably going to be able to find you a mentor. Hopefully they'll be able to find you one that is in the same content area that you are in. If not, reach out other places, ask the network, call me up. I'll, find me online, send me an email. I will see what I can do to find you one. We want somebody to be there for you. We will have a conference. The Alabama MBCT Network has a conference. I don't know if any of you guys went to our conference last year. It was in Huntsville. We do have a conference every year, and every year it gets bigger and better, and it's fun. We recognize all of our new certified teachers, and they get their MBCT pin at the conference. This year, it is going to be on January 30th. It says 2025, but it's 2027 at Central High School in Tuscaloosa. So I'm only 2 years behind. Anyway, but that's where it will be. It is a fantastic conference. Because you have registered for this, you should receive information about the conference in your email, probably through your RIC Center. If not, and if you are on social media, they usually promote that conference. The network will promote the conference as well. So if there's any way that you can get there, it's on a Saturday, and it's always a great day and just really inspiring, and just it's just a wonderful day. It's really nice to be around like-minded teachers. So again, MBCT Jumpstart is a monthly Zoom session. It is completely free if you belong to AEA. If you haven't joined AEA and you'd like to, I can help you out with that. Let me know. I can find you your UniServe director. And again, if you're in Morgan County, like Decatur City, Hartselle, or if you're in Winston County or in Haleyville, let me know. I'll be glad to sign you right up. Lots and lots of good things happening this year with lots of PD stuff that will be very, very helpful for this. But if you go on the AEA website, it's myaea.org, click on professional learning, and then cohorts. And then if you'll scroll down, you'll see the information about Jumpstart. You really only have to register for that one time, and it's automatically going to enroll you for each month and send you a reminder about it. You don't have to show up for all of them. You can come when you want to and not when you don't need to. We pretty much stay on track and on this schedule, but if something changes, we do publish those changes. The main thing is every once in a while in December, we won't have a lot of people that want to talk about it then. But if you are planning on writing over your Christmas or winter break, sometimes people need that one. So usually we do not cancel. We are usually there. There's somebody there to answer questions and talk to you and help you, kind of work through or clarify some instructions or anything that you need. It's just a really nice service that the AEA started. We started about 2 years ago. So, all right, where to find your resources? We are almost done here. So this is a new website. This website is about 2 years old. It is through the National Board website, and it is called Homeroom. When you go to Homeroom, and I'm going to see if it will, if I click on that. Do you guys see the National Board website now?
No, it's showing your,
It's not wanting to let me share the whole screen. It's only wanting to let me share that PowerPoint. Let me see if I can. Okay, can anybody see it now? It's still on the PowerPoint?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you can go to it on your own. Just exit out of that. I was hoping it would work. Well, anyway, when you go to the Homeroom website, it will take you through like sessions, like step by step of how to register. So I like to send people there. There's another part of the website that's called the Candidate Center. And after you've familiarized yourself a little bit with the website and you've set up an account and all that kind of stuff, which again, it does not cost anything to set up an account. It does not cost anything to go into the Candidate Center, look at instructions, look at certificate areas, anything that has to do with a component is going to be on that website, and it's going to kind of take you through each component 1, 2, 3, and 4. So everything that you will need to find out about the components, study guides, all that stuff is going to be right there. It's pretty intuitive. It's not too difficult to find, but if you cannot find it, ask. We will find it. We will help you get there. Anyway, but I like the layout of this homeroom just because it kind of starts out with like, what do I do first? And it does take you through the very basics of getting registered, finding your resources there, and all of that kind of stuff. So I would highly recommend going to that. And then if you want to go then and explore through the part that says Candidate Center, that's also another good way to find that information. Everything, really truly everything that you need other than a person to just to lean on and bounce ideas off of, it's all on the website. All the instructions, everything, it's all there. And again, if you don't remember this link, you're going to get it in the slideshow. All right, so here are the important deadlines. Now, I don't know about you. Some people are procrastinators. I am one of those people. One of my great shames in my life, I guess. But I got ADHD, and if I can put it off for a minute, I'm probably going to put it off for a minute. Don't be like me. Look at your deadlines and try to have stuff done early. Now, again, I don't think waiting until February to pay for components is procrastinating. I think that's just a smart business decision. But you can register now to have an account. Go ahead, get your account set up, get your Atlas set up, be ready to start. Start looking at the instructions. Start looking at the certificate areas. Make a decision about which certificate area you want to pursue. This is the important one here, the registration and component purchase deadline. That is your registration fee and any fees for the component. Now, if you are self-paying, then you will pay it there. I think that they may have some options for doing a payment plan, so that's up to you. If you are a scholarship recipient, then you are going to be paid for by the third party. So you will probably want to go ahead and register by that date, the 8th, if at all possible. Now, you can still add on more more components after that through the 28th. But I think that when you get the certificate, and if I'm not mistaken, when you get the scholarship, and I did my national boards by getting the scholarship. So I think that they go in and look at what you have registered for, and then the state will pay for it. And I think you have to do one the first year. Is that correct? You have to attempt one component the first year after you get the scholarship? No. I think that you have to do at least one component. So I would go ahead probably pretty early and try to decide which component I'm going to do. And you can go ahead and register for that one by the 8th. And then after that, if you want to do more components, like if you've decided you are going to do all 4 or whatever, you can still add those by the 28th. I just think it would probably be a good idea to go ahead and be registered and maybe have chosen one. But you're going to say that, that it's being paid for by a third party, and then the state will come in and take care of that for you. You don't have to do anything with that. After February 28th, you are locked in. That's your components that you are going to do. Now, you can still change your certificate area up until March the 19th. But after that, you are locked into that certificate and the components that you're going to complete that year. Okay? After the 28th, you cannot withdraw. Now, they are not going to come to your house and force you to submit something. But I would say that it is better if something happens between February and the end of June or middle of June. If something happens and you just cannot submit that component, I would turn in whatever I have done. Turn in something. Maybe you don't think it's the best. Maybe you think you need to work on it some more, whatever. But I would turn in anything that I had done. Because it doesn't matter. If you have to retake it, you're still going to have to pay for it again. So if you have something that you could get a score for, go ahead and turn it in. So you can withdraw up until February 28th, but after that, you're locked in. The testing dates, like I mentioned before, March 1st through June the 15th. You will register to take component 1, and then they will send you a link to register to take the test at whatever testing center you want to go to. The portfolio submission window will open up on April 1st, and it will go through June the 15th. And then after June the 15th, you just get to cool your heels for 6 months. They release scores, and this year is actually about a week earlier than it is sometimes, December the 4th. And they say on or by December the 4th. What that really means is they might release them about 10 p.m. on December the 3rd. You're not going to get any scores before that. It doesn't matter. It's not like the Praxis where you get like a tentative score on the one, that comes up and says, what you made on the multiple choice. you get nothing until December 4th. So whether you completed one component or all 4 components, December 4th is when you're going to get your scores, or like I said, maybe around 10 o'clock on December 3rd, you can start checking. But you will get lots and lots of emails about that and how to find that out. So that's pretty much all I've got for you. I'm going to put my computer does not work. So this is what you see when you have achieved certification. You get fireworks, and it's really kind of cool. It comes up on your computer screen, and you can take a screenshot of it, and then you can send it out to everybody about how excited you are, and you can wake your husband up at midnight and be like, look what I did. It's really fun. Or your wife, or your significant other, or your dog, whoever. Okay, this is my email address. This is how to find me. This is how you can get in touch with people at the network. That's where we are. So do not hesitate to reach out to me. I will answer your question, or I will forward your email to someone else who can answer your question. Sometimes I get really busy with stuff like you all do, and I might not get back to you immediately, but I will try to. I'm a little bit neurotic about it, so I will try to get back to you as quickly as I can. So it's jcdouglasteaching@gmail.com. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram and Threads at JC Douglas Teaching. I think Instagram and Threads have periods in them. I don't know if there was already somebody else out there that called themselves that. I can't imagine that there was, but anyway. But on Facebook, I think it's all just one word. And then we have our network groups. So I'm going to get back up on the chat and see if there are any questions I can answer in the next few minutes. And
I have a question.
Yes.
A question that we get quite often about the additional supplement. There are 3 different qualifications for the additional supplement. You do not have to have all 3. You have to be in one of those categories.
Yes. Yes. And the additional supplement, it's complicated. And I mean, it's complicated for everyone. And I think, when we start dealing with the legislature and money, it's just going to be complicated. It would be really nice. And I know that many people have advocated for everyone to be able to get the supplement. They just added ELA last year. Now they had reading and literacy, but not ELA.
Right.
So, it's just kind of weird how, what they've decided, because, it's just as, I feel like it's just as important to teach literacy and reading and writing in high school as it is to teach it up to age 12, but they just now have decided to do that. Do I need to leave up the email address? So no, you're going to get this. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing, and so I can see people's faces now, and try to answer some of the questions. And then when I know it's almost time to go, so like I said, again, please feel free to email me, ask me anything. If I don't know the answer, then I will find somebody that does. And your in-service center personnel are wonderful, and they will find you answers. And there's just so much support out there for you. Okay. So
there is, before you start answering questions, first of all, I want to thank everyone for participating in the session this morning. It has been so informative, and we really appreciate you. There's also the attendance link has been placed in the chat. Please make sure that you register for the session in PowerSchool and that you complete the attendance link so that you will be able to get your professional development hours for the time that you receive this valuable information today.
Hey, I have a question about the PowerSchool. If we did the PowerSchool link for the first session this morning, is that also like for this session as well, or do we have to do another one?
I do not have the PowerSchool link in front of me right now. I think in the form that you're completing right now is going to ask you which of the sessions you are attending throughout the day, and they'll be able to get you admitted into those particular sessions if you have not.
So as long as we've already done the first PowerSchool link or whatever, then we should be good for as long as we do the attendance for this.
Right. Yes.
Okay.
If you
Awesome.
complete the
Thank you.
information that's in the form. Okay.
All right. So, let's see. Lots of great questions here. I will try to get through them as quickly as I can. And then if you need to leave, if you've got another session that you are doing, no hard feelings. Like I said, feel free to ask away or, email me or whatever. Somebody asked, okay, Mindy says, when we make an account, is it okay to use our personal email address? Yes, you can use any email address that you like. When you make an account, it does not start your 3 years when you make the account. It is only the first year that you submit a component. So if you are just now getting started and learning about this and you are like, whoa, there's no way I'm not going to do a component this year, that's fine. You can still make an account. It starts when you submit your first components. Instructions on the website. Yes. So you will go to your certificate area and then there are detailed like guides for each area for component 1, component 2, component 3, component 4. It is all arranged by certificate area. So, a math teacher is going to have different standards than an English teacher. It's going to have different standards than a history teacher and a special ed teacher and so on and so forth. It is a very, very individualized process. So, and especially, we have like a lot of people who are certifying in CTE, and that may look completely different from what, a traditional, like a 3rd grade reading teacher is doing in their classroom. So, don't feel like you need to compare something that you are doing to something that somebody else is doing in their classroom. And they tell you, oh, I'm writing about this. And you're like, wow, that sounds great. That might be great for them. And, and it's wonderful to bounce ideas off of each other, but like, don't feel like you have to try to emulate anybody else. They want to see what you do in your classroom. And again, they're not looking for perfection. Not at all. Okay. Okay. The question about library. I think that you have to have a rostered class to be eligible for the 5,000, the additional 5,000. Now, everybody, when they certify, they get 5,000 a year. In Alabama, if you're at a public school and you're a National Board Certified teacher, you get the stipend that's $5,000. But I think that you have to be teaching a class. So like administrators are not eligible for the targeted supplement. Instructional coaches are not eligible for that. So I don't know about the librarians. That would be a question to maybe look at that, look at the information, look at the list that's provided in the memo from Dr. Mackey and make sure. So Allison asked about reading specialists getting the stipend. So if you are like an interventionist and you are pulling students and you have students that you pull daily, or, you have students that you see that you work with. And I'm saying that you're asking about the additional stipend. Reading specialists do get the 5,000. Everybody in public schools get that. But unless you have, like if you are a reading specialist and you are not pulling students, you're more like an instructional coach, then you would not get the additional 5,000. You would get the base 5,000, but not the targeted supplement. Can you work on a component before February and submit it? You can work on it, but you can't submit it until the submission window opens, which will be April 1st. But you can certainly work on it. And I would recommend working on things starting at the beginning of the year. So you can definitely work on it anytime that you want to. But then you can't submit it until the submission portfolio opens, which is April 1st. Whitney, how do I find my in-service center? In the program for this very conference, there's a map that tells you what your in-service center is. And so I would look at that. It will depend on what school system you're in. It doesn't depend on your address. Laura, that kind of goes in with what you asked, which was, can you go to a different cohort if it's closer? Sure. I mean, I don't see why not. I would, you would need to speak to whoever is running that cohort, but I can't imagine that anybody would say, no, you can't sit with us. So, talk to them about it and just find out. Celeste asked about AEA's Jumpstart program. If you go to myaea.org and go to professional learning, Everything is there for how to register for that. And that's also going to be on AEA's social media. It'll be on mine, you know. The most recent list of schools is going to be in that link that when you open this up out of the drive that you get, you will be able to see the most recent list. But they should update it next month, end of August, probably. Okay, I don't know if Kristen Connor is still here. So Kristen asked, this is a good question though. For adolescent and young adulthood science, you do have to choose a specific science. So biology, physics, chemistry. And she likes certifying biology, but she teaches 8th grade physical science. So I also used to teach 8th grade physical science for a little while. It's a fun class. So what you would need to do if you are certifying in biology for, you would have to borrow a class probably to be able to do that. So you would need to just really, really read the instructions for each component. There might be some things that you could do with your 8th grade class, but then there may be things where you would have to actually borrow a biology class for that. So I would just very, very carefully read the instructions. I think, Catherine, by the time you submit your portfolio, if your students are within that age band at that time, it would probably be fine. But read your instructions. Is Jaden still here? I don't know which QR code she says is not working. But I can try to reshare a link to it if it's not working. Most of the ones where I put a QR, I also put a link on the page. So when you get to this, you'll be able to click on the link.
What was the QR code for the homeroom?
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was that one.
It's just, and I'll put the link in here just in case, but it's just nbpts.org/homeroom. I'm pretty sure.
Thank you.
You are welcome. I'm sorry about that. They may have made some kind of a change or something since I put that in there, because I probably didn't put it in there this time. It was probably like last year when I did this. The forms for your admin and for your district to fill out, you do have to have those. You'll have to have all that within your packet where you turn in and submit things. There are specific places for you to upload those forms. So you will have to have all of those forms and everything completed before you submit it. The permission forms. So you don't mail those permission forms to national boards. They're not going to ask you for them unless there is a problem. So you just keep those on file. And if there's some kind of an issue and they ask you for them, you better have them. But I don't personally know anyone who has told me that they were ever asked for their forms. So the thing about the permission forms is really just like for the videos and for work samples. So if you have a parent who says, no, my child cannot be in your video, no, you cannot use my child's work samples, and they're adamant about it, and you can fix your camera, you can move their seat where they are not visible on camera, and then you just wouldn't use that child's work samples. That's, that stinks. But sometimes it happens, and especially like sometimes when there are children who are in the foster care system, they don't want them to be on any kind of video. And if that's the case, you got to understand that. You just rearrange. I had students when I was teaching 3rd grade when I did my MOC that I could not have on video, and I just put them on the other side of the room and pointed my camera elsewhere. And it's okay. And it is okay if their voice is recorded because they're not being identified. So. Martin with Teams. Yes. If you are a Teams teacher and you get national board certification, you get Teams, your contract Teams money, and you also get the national board stipend. If you are teaching in a Teams contract in a hard to staff school and you get the hard to staff supplement, you still get that. If you happen to also be in a list that's on a school that's on that list that's high poverty, you also get the additional $5,000. Teams teachers can make bank. I was on a Teams contract when I taught middle school science.
Thank you.
Gave it all up. But it's good money, but sometimes money isn't everything. So long story. But anyway, yes, you get everything that's coming to you. And I did both because when I was teaching on Teams contract, I was national board certified in literacy. I did not want to go back and do national boards in science. So I did the STEM certification for Teams, and I did not find it to be particularly useful. Whereas, honestly, doing national boards is not going to make you a good teacher, but it does change you as a teacher. And it's, if you're not already an accomplished teacher, then it's not going to make one out of you, but it does force you to be reflective and to really think about what you're doing in your classroom. And it's not like an all of a sudden, like overnight transformation, but it changes you, and for the good. It made me a much happier teacher, honestly. So I think I got better, and I'm probably really going to miss being in the classroom next year. I don't know what that's going to be like yet. So, okay, it is getting close to noon, so Alyssa, I'm not sure about that, but you can look on the National Board website on the certificate areas, because they may have added that and I just wasn't aware of it. So definitely look for that on their website. When you go to the certificate areas, it'll be on there. Okay. Anything else last minute? I know I saw something about times up here. Christian asked about getting the additional supplement if your school is listed. If your school is on that list, then yes. If your school is not on that list, then no. But if it's there, then it's there. So hopefully this has been informative and I didn't terrify you, and you are still interested in pursuing this, because it really is a great thing. If I can be of any help to you, please reach out. Like I said, I'm on socials. I'm on, available by email. I'd love to meet you in person tomorrow. I'll be doing this session again tomorrow, and then also a session on writing tomorrow afternoon in person. And then I will be at the National Board Conference in January in Tuscaloosa. So hopefully I'll see some of you then. And if you're in Morgan or Winston County or any of the city school systems within that, maybe I'll see you at your school. So then love to see any of you guys on the AEA MBCT Jumpstart as well. So anyway, I'm going to head out of here because I got to go pick up my son, and I really appreciate everybody's participation and your great questions, and just let me know what I can do for you guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much.